Chapter 6. Back inside the cave, I carefully set the water pot at the edge of the fire as if it were made of eggshells. Then I knelt to catch my breath and settle my red-lined heart rate. Sheila was already sitting at the fire near Galmine, and the gray-skinned woman smiled at both of us. "Did you guys hear that pterodactyl?" I asked while breathing hard. "Sheila and I just scared it away."
"We heard it screech,"
Galmine said, in a voice suggesting she'd been holding her breath until we arrived.
"Thank you so much for helping Sheila protect us. She's been doing so much for us on her own. I know she's glad you were there. I'm so happy to see you both are safely back. Trell stayed near me to ensure I was okay while you two battled that bird. Oh, please,"
Trell replied with dripping sarcasm coating her voice.
"I was only checking the fire, and it's a good thing I did, because apparently no one else can do it. It was going out. What would we have used to cook? We can start a new fire."
Sheila began, but the Spider-Woman cut her off.
"Whatever. Let's see what the mail brought us."
Trell scoffed as she walked on her human legs toward me.
"Oh, great. He spilled most of it. Typical male incompetence."
I was rather impressed with my performance. After I sloshed away the first inch, I'd managed to bring most of the remainder across the forest and up the ramp. It was at least 90% of what I pulled from the stream, and that felt pretty damned good.
"You cannot fault Victor. We had to hurry and defend the cave from the pterodactyl,"
Sheila replied as her eyes narrowed a bit at Trell.
"It was that close."
Trell asked.
"It sounded far away. Very close. It almost made it inside."
The blonde woman pointed at the door.
"Ah, well then. That's different." "Almost doesn't count."
Trell rolled her eyes and then crossed her arms over her perky breasts. The movement hid her nipples from me, and I realized I'd been staring at her. Sheila let out an almost silent sigh, and then sat with her legs crossed while she tended the fire. I found my eyes drawn to her little swath of bikini, and I forced myself to look away.
"Thank you for helping me, Victor,"
Sheila said with obvious relief.
"Now, you may rest and eat. You have earned it."
I glanced at Trell, expecting trouble, but she suddenly seemed more interested in drinking some of the water we'd brought.
"Please, sit here, Victor,"
Galmine said as she patted the ground between her and Sheila. "Thank you," I replied, still trying to catch my breath. I was already kneeling, so I shuffled on all fours around Sheila so I could sit between the two sexy women. The running and tension of being outside had driven my hunger to new heights. The aroma of the stew got me drooling, but I managed to keep my cool and not bang my imaginary plate like one of those prison riot movies.
"I'm afraid we only have one spoon,"
Sheila said as she picked up a blackened piece of carved wood from the side of the fire and used it to push the steaming clay pot in front of me. "That's okay," I replied. "I'm fine sharing, but you should all eat before
"As the Duchess of Family Area, I will obviously go first."
The Spider-Woman interrupted me. Trell made her way to the far side of Galmine, and her see-through dress pressed against her breasts, thighs, and ass in a way that made it hard for me to focus on anything else in the cave. I heard Sheila sigh a bit as she used the spoon to slide the pot over to Trell. The Spider-Woman didn't even bother to sit. She just reached down with her long chitinous fingers, took the spoon from Sheila, and then thrust it into the little pot before pulling out a full portion of the delicious-smelling turtle stew. Trell's black eyes turned to stare at me, and she licked the bottom of the spoon with a throaty moan. Her tongue danced across the edges of the small spoon as she lapped up the juices, and then she slowly slid it into her mouth. Her eyes never left mine, and I forgot to breathe.
Excellent."
Trell sighed after she slowly pulled the spoon out of her mouth and ran her tongue across her lips. She was still looking at me, and I saw her head lower a bit. She was staring at my crotch. My dick was threatening to rip out of my pants, so I changed the position of my legs in an effort to make my hard-on a little less noticeable. Trell was obviously trying to get me aroused, and it was working. I didn't know why she was doing this, but I suspected she just wanted to play with my emotions. Sheila reached out as if to take the spoon back, but Trell repeated her movement and took a second helping from the pot. The Spider-Woman kept her eyes on me while she licked the spoon again, and my cheeks burned.
There's only enough for 1 scoop per person,
Sheila said with concern.
Oh, shoot.
Trell replied with over-the-top fake sincerity as she turned her eyes from me.
I had no idea. Didn't we used to get 2? I think you know.
Sheila said softly.
It doesn't matter. I'm not giving one of my scoops to this male. This discussion has tired me, and I must now go rest.
The dark-haired woman gave the spoon to Galmine before she retreated to the back of the cave. Trell didn't bother looking at me when she walked away, but it didn't matter anymore. My dick felt like it could have hammered nails into 2x4s, and I glanced at the other 2 women to make sure they hadn't noticed my painful erection.
Guests first?
Galmine said as she passed me the spoon. You can go next. I tried to hand it back, but Galmine crossed her arms and slowly shook her head.
Men are always so polite,
Galmine declared.
I want you to go next, as thanks for helping. I want you to feel welcome here among us.
I turned to Sheila and offered her the spoon, but she shook her head. I hope you won't see me as a guest for too long, I said while reaching for the stew pot. I want to be an equal member of your group. I did want to be chivalrous and all, but I couldn't remember ever being as hungry as I was at that moment. I used the crude wooden spoon to capture a full helping of stew. When the turtle meat touched my lips, I was rewarded with an explosion of taste and satisfaction that nuked my usual meals of pizza and ramen noodles. I swallowed it all in one heaping gulp and felt the warm broth slosh into my empty stomach like a tidal wave. Oh, this is the best tasting thing I've ever put in my mouth, I finally said, with what I imagined was a bewildered look on my face. I knew rich people ate turtle soup, and now I could understand why.
Starvation makes everything taste better.
Sheila said plainly.
But it is excellent.
I think it would be amazing even if I weren't starving. Who's the chef? I asked.
Sheila caught it, I kept watch over it, and Trell kept watch over me,
Galmine said.
It was a team effort. We all work so well together.
Ugh, I think I could eat that whole pot and then 20 more after. Who's next? I asked as I looked to both Sheila and Galmine.
Galmine can go next,
Sheila said with a nod toward the stone-skinned woman. Here, please take it back. Thank you for letting me eat before you, I said to Galmine. I still felt crushing starvation, but I wasn't going to complain in front of 3 beautiful women.
You are most welcome,
Galmine said with her typical bubbly attitude. The single mouthful of food did little but increase my hunger. There was nothing I could do about it, though, so I leaned back on my hands and reflected on our situation. The pterodactyl in the tree was our most immediate threat, but in a world full of vicious, raging dinosaurs, it was comparatively minor. Strangely enough, it was the most basic problems of food, water, and safety we had to solve, rather than pie-in-the-sky stuff like how to fight a T-Rex or why the aliens put us here. Pie would hit the spot, I mused aloud.
Pie? Is that one of your world's foods?
Galmine asked, and her emerald eyes sparkled with interest. What? Yes, pie is a kind of, I tried to think of how to describe pie to a beautiful alien woman. I wasn't even sure I knew how to make a pie. It's like a flattened basket of mashed up fruit wrapped in sugary baked bread?
I saw it in my head, but your description is much better. It sounds delicious.
Gelmine replied as she tapped her temple. She then passed the spoon and pot to me. I passed the food and spoon to the blonde Catwoman, and she took them from me gratefully. I watched her tip the pot to get at the remaining spoonful of stew, but then I turned away before she could slide the spoon into her mouth. I didn't mean to talk about pie, but I was thinking about food, I said. I guessed that was the last of it, but you wouldn't happen to have more turtles stashed here, would you?
No,
Replied Sheila.
I have to hunt for it daily.
Yeah, I remembered you talking about that, I asked. How much meat can you bring back in a day?
Not enough, Male, and now we have another mouth to feed.
Trell huffed from her nook in the back of the cave. I peered into the darkness toward her alcove, but there was some sort of privacy curtain, and the light of the fire had a hard time penetrating.
He did just get...
Gelmine began to reply, but Trell interrupted her.
I know exactly what he's done. He's been annoying, he's followed Sheila to get the water, and he's anxious to get his mail mitts on our meager food supply.
Trell poked her beautiful face out from behind her silk curtain, and then she scrunched up her nose at the gray-skinned woman. I am trying to help you all with... I started to say, but Gelmine jumped in.
We do have some berries.
She pointed back toward Trell.
We keep a bunch of them back there, where it isn't as hot. We don't have much. But it's what I'm used to eating on my homeworld. Sheila was a sweetheart and found some for me to eat before she went away to find you.
Pfft, some of us don't eat weed seeds,
Trell said with snark.
I was able to get many berries, yes.
Sheila explained.
They grow all around us on the hill outside the cave and are easy to gather if you have the time. My species can subsist on fruits and berries for a while, but we require meat if we are to exert ourselves.
You mean like getting water and hunting? I asked.
Yes, you are correct.
Sheila began.
Both require extra calories that I cannot get from eating fruit and vegetables like Gelmine. However, hunting in this world is not easy. It is risky to kill big animals, and I cannot carry back all the meat. It is much easier to grab small turtles and fish.
Even if we did kill a big dinosaur, where would we store all the meat? I asked as I thought about the small refrigerator in my apartment. We'd be overwhelmed by scavengers a day or two before the place stank of rot.
But we would eat like queens while we had it,
Trell said dryly from her nook. Sheila only nodded.
Turtles like this are my preferred quarry, for now. I can bring them back here alive and toss the shell when I'm finished with it. But only the small turtles walk the shores of the lakes and creeks. The bigger ones are in the deep water.
Hunt every day and eat it right away? Oh, that sounds exhausting. I really wished I'd paid attention to those survival shows on television with the guys who could live for weeks on moss and tree bark. How would they handle food if they were on this planet?
I am afraid it is,
Sheila answered.
I have to supplement our meals with fruits and berries, which is why I'm not at my peak physical condition right now.
I looked her up and down and found it hard to believe. You aren't in top form? Oh, I can't imagine what you'd look like if you were, I said with a little chuckle. I expected a smile in return, but Sheila turned serious.
On my homeworld, the women are expected to always maintain our bodies, maybe even more than the males.
I was struck by how alien she really was. A woman with short, soft fur, feline eyes, and a mane of hair that would be the envy of Rapunzel. All three of the women were aliens, but they didn't fit the mold of the little green men we always worried about back on Earth. Maybe alien was the wrong word, since each of them were pulled from their homes and dumped here like me. We were all aliens on this planet.
Are you feeling all right, Victor? Still thirsty?
Gelmine asked as her hand rubbed my shoulder. I blinked at her a few times and realized I must have missed something. No, sorry. I'm easily distracted. I smiled at her and then turned back to Sheila.
It is all right,
Sheila said.
I just wanted you to know why I am not at maximum efficiency.
Well, if it's always like this, I can see why, I said with a laugh. You're killing yourself taking care of everyone else. I'm exhausted even watching you, but you were kind enough to let me into your cave, so...
I have heard enough! Did I miss a vote in which we allowed this male to join us?
Trell interrupted. She sauntered toward us on her human legs, and I once again tried to avoid staring at her sweat-soaked body beneath the revealing silk dress.
If we must vote,
Sheila replied in her tired voice.
I for one wish to allow him to join. He survived alone in the wilds. He volunteered to get water and did well for his first time. He helped me fight off the flying dinosaur without being asked. And though I see the fear in his eyes, he shields that fear from the animals. It is an important skill for a hunter. In my estimation, he has done more than enough to join our group.
I agree.
Galmine said right after the blonde warrior.
If Sheila says he helped her outside, he automatically has my vote. But from what I've seen and hear, Victor has been nothing but kind and thoughtful to me. I really want him to stay.
That is 2-1 in favor.
Sheila declared, giving no time for Trell to object.
Wait!
Trell replied as she got right up next to the cooking fire.
I haven't voted.
I shifted uncomfortably in my spot as Trell deliberated for what felt like 15 seconds. Then she cleared her throat, looked at each of the 2 other women, and raised her pointer finger claw in the air.
I vote to allow this male to join,
Trell said, without an ounce of sarcasm. The 3 of us shared a confused moment of silence as we watched the complicated Spider-Woman. Thank you? I said to Trell, hoping she wasn't about to take it back.
The male will not thank me,
Trell said as she raised her perfect nose in the air.
My decision was based solely on being part of the winning majority. I obviously initiated the vote to ensure you would join and start off in my debt.
Victor is not in your debt, Trell,
Sheila said.
Even if you voted for him.
Trell exhaled as if she'd been given the worst news of her life, and she shot me a cold glare.
Yay!
Galmine said with a refreshing burst of excitement.
We can be like a big happy family, working to support each other in this horrible place. Oh, it feels so good to have such wonderful friends, don't you think?
I promise you won't regret it, I said. This is not much different from situations I've encountered on my world. I was thinking of the numerous resource gathering and empire-building games I'd played over the years, although none of them dropped me in the middle of an alien planet, surrounded me with dinosaurs and beautiful women, and then failed to give me the smallest clue about how to win. I knew nothing about my base except it was a cave on a hillside. I didn't have a single tool or the slightest idea where to get one. And my workforce consisted of 3 sexy alien women with strange skills and seemingly arbitrary stats. My empire was destined to be pretty damn small. Unless I figured out how to protect these women.
This should be good.
Trell huffed.
You seriously expect us to believe you've been in a situation like this one?
Not like this, I admitted. I've been involved in numerous, scenarios or simulations where I started with nothing. The best thing we can do right now is sketch out a plan for how we can survive and stick to it. We can adjust it later on, but a plan is critical to long-term survival. Otherwise, you tend to live day to day, always reacting to unforeseen threats instead of seeing potential problems and avoiding them completely. This is especially true when you don't have enough helpers. I looked at Trell and raised an eyebrow.
For the 10th time, I do not work for you.
Trell replied with defiance.
Join our group if you must. Help our group if you want. But don't expect me to do anything.
I only wish to be entertained as I wait for my inevitable rescue,
And you are hardly entertaining.
I could tell there was no use in arguing with the beautiful Spider-Woman, even though she was a quarter of our manpower. We would have to work around her. Right. So, on my world, people use computers to plan it all out, which we don't have.
What is a computer?
Galmine asked as she fluttered her eyelids.
It's a device that displays data and can execute programming.
Trell answered before I could, and I wondered how advanced her civilization was.
Oh, so the IQ is a computer,
Galmine said, while tapping her temple.
Can we use this?
Maybe. I hope so. I replied thoughtfully. But I've only just learned how to turn mine on.
Tell us what your plan would be.
Sheila said with interest. So, on my world, we basically have reams of charts, technology trees, and technical data we study as we lead our teams through a challenge, I said. It could be as simple as finding a magic chalice, or as complicated as managing a galactic war. I looked around the room and saw that they weren't really following. I glanced down at my hands and struggled to find the right words to make this simpler. The scenarios are always different, but they all boil down to proper planning and resource management. Since none of us know what we're doing here, that's where we have to start.
I see,
Sheila said. It starts like this. What is this group's biggest challenge? I asked as I sat up straight and rubbed my hands together.
Dinosaurs.
Sheila replied.
Food and water?
Galmine guessed.
Annoying males.
Trell added. Those are all short-term problems, I said, ignoring Trell's contribution. I believe our biggest challenge is establishing a secure home. Whether you are a chipmunk or a powerful emperor, you have to have a base of operations. We need somewhere we can go to be safe, no matter what else is happening out in the world.
Like this cave,
Galmine suggested. I don't think so. On our way back, Sheila and I saw the pterosaur clawing its way up our ramp. That means there are potentially 2 species of flesh-chewing beasties with their beady eyes on our cave. Maybe more. And how long do we have before the orange ones arrive in force? I looked to Sheila.
The last time they came about 30 days after the first scouts.
Sheila replied. So we have about that long to fortify this cave so it can withstand... I said, until I had a terrible thought. Did you stick around after the birds arrived?
I was on the next hillside while I decided where to go, but yes, I saw them from afar.
She replied. Were they all in the cave, or did they also hang around outside? I asked, as I continued my train of thought.
I did not get back inside once they arrived in large numbers, but I think the females deposited eggs in the cave.
Sheila said, as if watching it all again.
The males, I presume, remained outside.
Do you think you could have gone back into that cave if you wanted to? I asked. I was afraid I already knew her answer. If the warrior woman could have fought them off and kept her old cave, she would have. Sheila thought about it for a few moments.
I do not think I could have returned.
She replied, with disappointment lingering in her voice.
They have very sharp teeth, and it was difficult to escape just a few of them. They chased me for about a mile. As more arrived, I did not dare go back.
I sat there and stared at the crackling fire. What little smoke there was drifted up and out through some small cracks in the roof. All it lacked was some hot dogs and the sweet smell of s'mores. It would have been relaxing if our situation wasn't so serious.
Victor?
Galmine called.
What are you thinking?
I shook my head to clear my thoughts. I was also getting very tired sitting there in the dark cavern. I wish we knew how long the birds were going to nest here, I said to Galmine. It could help us determine if we can hold out in the cave.
Why would we do that, Male? Your idea of planning is what? Hiding?
Trell's sarcasm was especially biting because she was right. It wasn't a very good solution. Yeah, well, the problem is that we won't be able to go outside while the birds are here, I answered. What if we had a reason to leave? Sheila said they chased her for a mile, and she's faster than all of us. Galmine would never survive. Can you imagine being stuck inside the cave until the birds were done nesting? I chuckled so I didn't sound overly dramatic. Even that confinement wouldn't be so bad if Trell crept around in her own cave and Galmine and Sheila lived in mine.
I had hoped we could find enough help to fight off the birds when they arrived, but I was not thinking clearly.
Sheila answered.
We cannot be in the cave when the orange birds arrive.
And who knows what trouble the pterodactyls will cause if they mix together with the other birds, I said. It seems like we'd want to be away from them both.
Where are we going to go?
Galmine asked, with sadness in her voice. It came out like fingernails on the chalkboard because she was always so happy. I waited to see if Sheila would answer, but she remained silent. So far, my tour of this planet included a slaughterhouse beach, a suffocating jungle, and a frightening redwood forest. Besides the cave, I had no idea where to go for safety.
Victor, we saw that gigantic tree lying on the forest floor. Could we live inside it?
Sheila asked. I immediately liked her suggestion. But could we? It was certainly big enough. It was at least as spacious inside as this cave, and it was made of wood. We could carve the inside once we had tools. Even the largest dinosaur would have problems penetrating that massive trunk. I think, I began slowly. We have to consider Galmine first. I would rather live inside a tree trunk above the ground than be in this dank cave, but staying near the cave gives us certain advantages we wouldn't have way down by the creek. Mainly, it gives Galmine a place to hide while we build whatever we're going to build. If we're a half a mile away, we won't know if there's trouble here in the cave.
I can protect her, Male. Better than you could, certainly.
Trell's words came out with an acidic tone.
Oh, I see his point.
Sheila jumped in.
The tree is far from our current home. Also, I often see creatures wandering along the creek. It would probably be hard to build walls and doors at the tree with dinosaurs around. We would have nowhere safe to hide down there if a threat did find us. So build close to the cave.
Trell scoffed.
It's not hard to figure out, Male.
Can we build in front of the cave on the open ground you showed me, Sheila? I said, while pretending not to hear Trell. The Spider-Woman's suggestion was right on target. Pretty good for someone who despised the thought of sitting in on our planning meeting.
Are you suggesting we construct a camp outside?
Sheila clarified. Yeah, or something like a little fort, I said in reply. Maybe 4 walls of upright tree trunks with a door, big enough to keep out the birds, nothing fancy. I have no doubt we could figure it out, but have you seen anything like that before?
I have seen my people construct small camps for hunting in our forests, so I only know how to make a very basic shelter.
Sheila explained.
The concept should be the same for a larger enclosure, but there is much we must acquire before we can build anything. For instance, we need better cutting tools to bring down the trees. I have used a sharp stone I found in the creek to cut a few of the smallest trees for my spears, but it is very painful to use after a short time. We will also need a lot of cordage to hold logs together, which we can fashion from bark or stringy plant leaves. Waste of time.
I pictured what I wanted in my head. It was like those old military forts I'd seen on TV with walls of pointy logs. If we had time, we could add a roof. That would be a proper dino-proof base for us. So, all we have to do is build some axes, cut down a shitload of trees, and then string them together in the shape of a square, I said, with growing enthusiasm. Then we can build some sort of smaller shelter in the middle so we can get out of the weather. We also need room for a campfire. My mind danced through the plan as I spoke, and I felt the excitement build in my stomach. Yeah, we could do this if Sheila and I worked together. We could figure out how to set the logs for the walls and build a little hut.